As you know, the old age African saying, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, we go together.
You know what my favorite African saying is?
What?
If you think you're too small to do something, you've never spent a night with a mosquito.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
When you are the grandson of Nelson Mandela, you walk in the shadow of a giant. But Ndaba Mandela is creating his own path as a leader and advocate.
Ndaba Mandela, thank you so much for coming all the way from South Africa to our studio here in New York City. It's a pleasure and an honor. What is it that you're here that you would like to share with us?
Today, I would like to share my story with you, a message of love, peace, and unity. Don't have to worry about the coronavirus. We will get over it. We will continue to impact the world and inspiring young people to unite and to build a better world.
Nelson Mandela was South Africa's first democratically elected president. The father of the Rainbow Nation was a civil rights icon who spent 27 years of his life behind bars fighting for equal rights against South Africa's inhumane apartheid regime, which prided itself on extreme separation of white, black, and brown citizens.
We have made it very clear in our policy that South Africa is a country of many races. There is room for all the various races in this country.
Under the harsh apartheid regime, which began in 1948, the darker your skin color meant the worse quality of life you had. Nelson Mandela and other South African civil rights leaders fought to end this injustice. And in 1964, Mandela and many of his comrades in the African National Congress were sentenced to life in prison by the apartheid regime for conspiracy to overthrow the government. From 1964 to 1982, they were locked inside the brutal Robben Island prison off the coast of Cape Town.
My grandfather truly believed in humanity. Didn't care about race, color, or creed. In Robben Island, there was a rule that was set for him specifically. My grandfather taught himself and became fluent in reading and writing Afrikaans, the language of the enemy. One of the things he says is, in order to defeat your enemy, you must work with your enemy because then he becomes your partner and maybe even your friend at a later stage. When the wardens, right, would receive letters from their loved ones, some of them came straight out of high school, they were young men, they couldn't interpret what the hardcore straight language from their parents was. So Mandela would take those letters and actually translate it for the warden. Now the warden would be so touched that he would smuggle an extra couple of slices of bread for Mandela, an extra blanket for Mandela, maybe a newspaper for Mandela, whatever the case may be. And when the authorities would find that out, they would be so mad, right, that they would change the guard immediately. Even when they changed the next guard, Mandela would find a way to connect to that guard, right? And the same thing would end up happening. So they had to put a rule that no guard on Robben Island could guard Nelson Mandela for more than 3 months at a time.
Between 1982 and 1988, Mandela and some of his ANC comrades were moved from Robben Island to Pollsmoor Prison in Cape Town. But by 1988, Mandela was moved again in the city, but inside Victor Verster prison, which was a home that was surrounded by guards. It was during his stay here where he first met his 8-year-old grandson, Ndaba.
So my parents told me, we're going to visit your grandfather in jail. And so as an 8-year-old, I had a typical image of what jail was like, you know, concrete bars, cops, wardens, etc. But when we got there, it was a normal house. They were trying to break him down mentally. To say, Nelson Mandela, you're an old man now. How about you spend the rest of your days away from political life, with your family, enjoying these days, and we will make sure that you live the rest of your life in luxury. But you need to denounce your organization, the ANC. You need to denounce your comrades that you're working with. And of course, we know Nelson Mandela never caved in. So when I got there, there was a swimming pool. I never had a swimming pool at home, right? I met a chef for the very first time. I never knew what a chef was. We had the most amazing food. And of course, we met the man himself, and he was so happy and proud to meet us. And that was the first time I had an idea, or I was inspired. That moment, I said, I want to be like this man. I want to go to jail, because I thought this was jail.
So it wasn't, I wasn't going to be a leader, it wasn't, I'm not going to be a fireman, no. It was, I'm going to go.
I'm going to jail so I can live like this man.
And the crowd getting excited. There's Mr. Mandela, Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man taking his first steps into a new South Africa.
In February 1990, Nelson Mandela was released from prison after long negotiations with the apartheid government.
And a salute from Mr. Nelson Mandela, his wife Winnie, greeting the people outside the fences of the Victor Verster prison.
This year is a very special year because it's 30 years since Madiba was released from prison, 27 years behind bars. Where were you in the exact moment in February of 1990 when he walked out and he's got his fist in the air? Where were you? What was that moment like for you?
I was right there, my friend.
Oh, wow.
I was right there, my friend.
Front row seat.
I was right there, my man. My fist was in the air, my friend. You understand what I'm saying? I was just in awe seeing so many people celebrating the release of this man. Aunties, babies, cats and dogs were in the streets dancing. The world was dancing. It was a great moment, not just for South Africa, but for the world to see justice prevail, It was an amazing moment. So when you see moments like this, how can you not be an optimist?
I have fought very firmly against white domination. I have fought very firmly against black domination. I cherish the ideal of a new South Africa.
In 1994, Nelson Mandela was elected president of South Africa. When Ndaba was 11, he moved in with his grandfather, who was serving his only term in office.
I moved in when I was 11 years old, and the first couple of years, we didn't really have a grandfather. We didn't go for walks in the park. We didn't go watch movies or go bowling, right? Because he's the president. He's up and down doing his work. But whenever we did have an opportunity to share a meal, a dinner or a lunch, he would actually talk to me and say, Ndaba, you must never drive a Jaguar because people will know you have money. To him, humility was an absolute, pinpoint character that all leaders must have. You cannot lead if you do not have education. You cannot lead if you are all about yourself. A leader is about serving the community, standing up for those who cannot stand for themselves, being a voice for those who are marginalized in community. So my grandfather was really a loving man, and he was so in touch with humanity and loved children. We asked him once, what was the one thing that you missed all those years you spent in jail? And he said, all those times I spent in jail, I never heard the sound of children. Children represent a new beginning. They represent hope for a better future.
Now Ndaba is spreading the lessons he learned from his grandfather.
I released a book in 2018 called Going to the Mountain, Life Lessons from My Grandfather. And I wrote that, particularly for young people. Because, yes, he's a president, yes, he's a revolutionary, but how can we make sure that young people, relate to Nelson Mandela? Which leads me to the next thing. We've created a leadership program that we call the 100 Mandelas, where we want to take young people between the ages of 25 to 35 to bring them to South Africa, to walk in the footsteps of Nelson Mandela, to teach them the values of Nelson Mandela, and so that they can lead with the spirit of Nelson Mandela when they go back to their respective communities and start or continue with their own social enterprises that they've already begun.
So explain to me, what is the Mandela Research Institute for Humanity, and why is it important for you to have a footprint here in America?
The Mandela Institute for Humanity. We have decided to have a presence here in New York to be closer to the decision makers. I have been working in this space for the past 10 years with our organization in South Africa called Africa Rising, and we realized that it would be much more beneficial for us to be at the center where everything gets made. We understand that what we are working on is not just an African issue, but it's a global issue. And why not be closer to the people that make decisions at the very top?
Now, you mentioned Africa Rising. Explain that to me. What is that charity?
So Africa Rising was born in 2010, and that basically came out of me realizing that the world really has very limited knowledge on Africa. Most of the information that is perpetuated by mainstream media is that Africa is a place of war, poverty, disease, and dictators. And so we wanted to be able to be in a position to break down those misconceptions, give young Africans a sense of pride and purpose and a heightened sense of belonging to the African continent, to say I'm an African, I know what it means to be an African, and I am proud of it. We want young Africans to be at the forefront of Africa's development, not that the development taking place should benefit those multinational corporations that have been doing this thing for so many years. We want our people to have self-determination, and more importantly, to be able to break the cycle of poverty that exists in Africa, to take its rightful place in the global arena.
Of all the causes Ndaba Mandela is spearheading, none is more important to him than eradicating HIV and AIDS.
It's an epidemic that took away both my parents. It's an epidemic that has created a generation of child-headed households across Africa. So we are saying that we have the medicine, we have the technology. All we need to now do is to take the home testing kits, distribute them across rural communities so people have knowledge of what their status is in order for them to get the medicine so that they can stop the transmission of this disease. Once you stop the transmission of this disease, you have effectively ended HIV/AIDS.
15 years ago, I was in South Africa studying abroad when your grandfather came on television to address the nation about your father passing away of AIDS. It was a watershed moment for me as a student because the entire country stopped what they were doing in their tracks. Radios, televisions, everywhere you went, everyone was frozen to watch him come out of retirement and address this country about this disease. When he spoke and when he addressed it, suddenly the stigma or the idea of what AIDS is across Africa began to change.
That's why we have called you today to announce that my son has died of AIDS.
We had a discussion with the family to discuss what we'd tell the world. And one of my cousins suggested that we talk about, oh, HIV/AIDS doesn't kill you, it kills your immune system, so HIV/AIDS didn't kill him, it was TB, etc., etc. My grandfather said, no, we shall not do that. We shall simply say his life was taken by HIV/AIDS, full stop. We need to tackle this disease head on. We need to stop hiding behind other things. And it was the first time that a prominent family in South Africa, probably across the continent, had disclosed the true reason of why one of their loved ones had died. And I am very lucky to have been able to work with United Nations HIV/AIDS as a global ambassador, going to Brazil during the World Cup, Russia, different parts of the world, talking about HIV/AIDS to the most affected people, to orphanages, to sex workers, to different people of different sexual orientations, to let people know that we are all, at the end of the day, part of the same human family.
Viva Nelson Mandela, viva!
Do you believe in your lifetime this disease could be eradicated?
I believe the 2030 target that has been set by the United Nations can be achieved if we all work together.
Why in 2020 is this still a thing? Why is AIDS still a massive topic of conversation?
That is because there is still the stigma that exists on HIV/AIDS. People are still scared to get tested to find out whether they have HIV/AIDS or not. And so when you have 6,000 people still being affected by HIV/AIDS around the world, one of the scariest statistics for America, to bring it here home in America, a black gay man in America has a 1 in 2 chance of contracting HIV/AIDS in their lifetime. That's the current stat, 1 in 2. It's insane, right? So AIDS is not over. A lot of people think we've defeated this disease. It's not. There are approximately 7 million people in South Africa who are living with HIV/AIDS and don't know it. We need to continue fighting this disease. We just have to continue talking, engaging with the young people until the end, man, until it goes down to the zero.
During our interview, the coronavirus epidemic was beginning to take shape in America. 2 weeks after we spoke, Ndaba Mandela was diagnosed with COVID-19. Much like his grandfather, he used his platform to spread awareness.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, Corona is here. I myself have Corona. And there's been a lot of talk and a lot of people wondering whether this thing is true or not. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am a witness. I have been affected and I have contracted this coronavirus. So we have to be responsible, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it is a little bit scary, to be honest. Now you have the coronavirus, you have bad leadership, you have a number of challenges in the world today. And so for me, Being a proud African, that is the point of view that I always teach my children, to be proud, to never be scared, to challenge themselves even. I believe that there's a positive and a negative in every situation. With this virus right now, right, we are all scrambling. Hey, we need to get that Aperol, we need to wash our hands, like you said. It provides an opportunity for us to come together to decide how we're gonna defeat this coronavirus and to work across different borders. Italy's in crisis right now. It's growing expensively in England, France, you name it. So we are going to be forced as doctors around the world to come together to discuss what is the best practice on fighting this disease.
Through his transmissions on social media, Ndaba remained calm and collected and urged the rest of his country in doing the same to fight COVID-19. Like all of the causes he spearheads, he wishes for others to follow his lead and create their own path.
Do you ever see yourself running for president of your country?
I believe that when the time comes to step up, I will step up.
For the children watching at home, what is your message to them?
I want to say to the young people out there, it all begins with a dream. I want you to dream so big that your dreams scare you. If your dreams don't scare you, you are not dreaming big enough. Once you have your dream, you can start working at it step by step, day by day. Don't forget to celebrate the small achievements that you get along the way. Set yourself milestones. Have yourself a mentor. Surround yourself by people that love and guide you, who want to see you succeed. You are the master of your destiny. Working together, there is nothing that we cannot achieve. So let's go out there, ladies and gentlemen, and let us be the best that we can be. Love and respect will take us all the way.